It's Punk Rock Talk, episode 6. Right now, you're listening to Knoxious. They're my guests today. This is a live track that they recorded recently. It's on our Rebellion Noise 2022 Spotify playlist. If you have not already, follow that Spotify playlist. We update it every Monday, so the songs stay fresh. And we update it with songs by artists that are going to be joining us on this show. Some of their picks, some of our own. And there's something different up there this week. If you go to the very end of the playlist, there's actually a couple of podcasts on there. No One Likes Us podcast just released an episode that features music by The Havoc. So we're on that episode, and we're grateful to those guys. Shout out to them. And then there's also the Put the Stress Down podcast that I was interviewed a few weeks ago for that. I mentioned it on here, but I never put it on the playlist for some reason, but it dawned on me today. Why not? So if you want to hear some awesome punk rock, street punk, hardcore punk, and you also want to listen to a couple of podcasts, that's up there for you. Before I bring Knoxious on here, I want to talk about a few things. First of all, we're celebrating Valentine's Day this week. Look what I got. It's my first Valentine's Day as a DILF. That came from my beautiful wife. I'm not going to read what's on the back because that's just for me. But shout out to her. What'd you guys do for Valentine's Day? Did you have a good Valentine's Day? You can tell us about it in the comments. And we're going to talk a little bit about Valentine's Day with Knoxious at the beginning of this interview. There's some interesting stuff about that in the city of Chicago. Again, this is Knoxious, another live track, Rebellion Noise 2022 Spotify playlist. What'd you guys think about a Rebellion Noise compilation? Something similar to... You guys remember this? I do. Thinking about it. A couple other things to talk about real quick. New news that's happening right now. If you have not noticed on Instagram today, The Unseen have announced that they're going to start using their Instagram profile again. So follow them if you're not following them already. Unseen Punks, that's UNSEENPUNKS. Who knows what they have planned for the future, but if they're getting active on Instagram, I know they've got a lot of archives. Mark mentioned that, so I'm sure they're going to be posting that, but something tells me that they're probably going to be getting a little bit more active. Don't quote me on that, but just a theory. Also, I'm hearing rumblings. Punks Unite Fest. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Something tells me that it is. If you are not already following Fire Rock on Instagram, you need to do that. They posted something cool yesterday. Sounds like they're hinting at something, so we'll see. One more thing before I bring Knoxious on here. I want to talk about this. It's Punk Rock Saves Lives. I went and saw the Casualties last week, and I saw a merch table set up in the corner with all of this Punk Rock Saves Lives merchandise and pamphlets and things like that, and caught my attention, so I went over there to investigate. If you're not familiar with this organization yet, you should definitely check them out. They are also here on Instagram, and they have a website, punkrocksaveslives.org. For them, PUNK is an acronym: positivity, unity, nurture, kindness. I'm going to read just a little bit here what it's about. Punk Rock Saves Lives is a catalyst at events allowing the punk rock community to start focusing on health and wellness with an emphasis in mental health, human rights, and equality. Rob Rushing is the founder and director of outreach. He is who I met at their merch table at the Casualty Show last week. Punk Rock Saves Lives is teaming up with the Casualties and Stolen Wheelchairs on tour, providing free bone marrow drives to those in attendance. Every 3 minutes, someone is diagnosed with a blood cancer or disorder. Punk Rock Saves Lives are trying to add as many people on the list to help find matches. Rob will train you on site on how to register individuals for the registry. Really interesting that they're doing this. I've been considering participating with that in that ever since I talked with Rob last week. And maybe we'll get him on here as a guest sometime soon to talk. But again, if you are interested in learning more about that, it's punkrocksaveslives.org. You can also email Rob at punkrocksaveslives.org. That's Rob at punkrocksaveslives.org. And lastly, before I bring Knoxious on here, this episode and every episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Dead and Buried Inc. If you're in a band and you need merch, they are your source. It's Dead and Buried Inc., I-N-C, not I-N-K. You can find them here on Instagram. Their handle is at Dead and Buried Inc. Or their website, deadandburiedinc.com. That's Dead and Buried Inc., I-N-C, not I-N-K. They have fast turnaround times. They've been doing this shit forever, so the quality is going to be outstanding. In-house art designers, if you need assistance with that. So give them a follow here on Instagram and reach out if you are in need of merch. Having said that, I'm ready to go ahead and get Knoxious on here, so let me send them the invitation. Give me 1 second here. There, we sent the invite. Now, while we're waiting on Knoxious to join, if you have questions during this episode, please submit them. What's up, guys?
What's going on, man?
Hey, I was just telling everybody that if they have questions, that they can submit them by clicking that question mark icon on their screen. Don't put your questions in the comment section. They get lost there. And as we go throughout this interview, we will look at those questions and see which ones we can answer. Having said that, welcome to Punk Rock Talk. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, man.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Good.
Hey, happy to have you guys. You guys just had a really big weekend. You were the openers for the Sounds of the Street Festival. How was it?
It was awesome. I think we all had a blast. Probably our first show this year, our fourth show this year as a band, new band. So, I mean, it was pretty awesome to be on that.
I was pretty nervous, man. I had noodle legs the whole time I was playing, you know? But it was fun.
Well, you know, I saw some video of your guys' set, and it looked like you guys were having fun and engaging with the audience. You sounded tight. And I actually posted a video clip yesterday onto our Instagram to promote today's interview, and it's still getting a lot of likes every hour. I think it's creeping up to 500.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, we just keep checking everything. We're like, oh, all right.
Well, thank you for doing that, man.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Even our own stuff is climbing.
Well, you know what? I think that it's kind of an indication of how hungry people are for live music again. And, you know, some people aren't able to go to shows yet. Or there just hasn't been the opportunity for them to go to one. There hasn't been one. And so they're connecting with it through their phones. And, you know, it's invigorating to see bands on stage again.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you guys, obviously, you know, it seemed like you guys had a good set. And last week I interviewed Josh, the promoter, and I've talked with him since the fest. Super cool dude. Was this your first time working with him?
Yeah, it was my first time working with him in more recent years, but I was on a
band. You played a show with him, no?
Yeah, and, he used to be in a band way back then. I'm talking about early 2000s. I was probably like 19. I was in a band called Cultural Suicide, and there used to be this little punk venue in a town called Harvey, like Southside. And it's like underage, whatever, everything went like total punk venue. He used to book a lot of shows there. My first show, I opened up for a Global Threat when they were touring for Here We Are, I think it was. Then, like, we always kind of knew each other, but never really put everything together until me and him started talking this year. It turns out, like, we should have hung out, like, so many times over the years, you know? So, it's just been a long time since I really talked to him or even noticed him. But I used to go see his old band all the time, and I'm like, wait a second, you were in that band. So, but yeah, Josh is a good guy, man. He's doing it, though.
Yeah, you know, he messaged me yesterday. I think it was, we were talking, maybe it was the day before. I think it was the day before yesterday. He was telling me just how stoked he was on how well the fest went. There was a lot of people there that traveled from out of state. And I could tell that he was really, really happy with the end result, and that he wants to do it next year. So that's a great sign.
Yeah, I talked to him yesterday too, kind of the same thing. He said the promoter, owner, everybody was really pleased with the turnout, you know, everything, just the whole weekend.
I mean, we were really pleased with the turnout for us too. For like a first band, you never really get. I've been to shows when, you know, I'm like 1 out of 10 people there for like the first band at those types of shows. So it was like really pumped to see, like, there was a pretty decent crowd there during the whole fest.
Like you were talking about, Jason, with like the energy of the crowd. Everybody was there early. Like everybody just wanted the shows, so you could tell. And it helped with us too, you know, like feeling that. So it was nice. That was probably one of the bigger crowds we played out of the last like 4 shows. But it was awesome because it was more of a show like built for like some of that what we're doing. So
that's awesome, because that was the thing that I was kind of concerned with when I saw that you guys were the openers. I was like, fuck, I really hope that they have a good crowd, because you're right. Sometimes, John, you're right. Sometimes it's like, you know, you're the opener. There's like maybe 10 people there. But Josh had told me that the crowd came out literally for every set. Every band had a good audience.
Yeah. Even us running in between doing stuff or whatever, like we're still trying to catch as many bands as we can. And they, you know, all the bands killed it. All the bands were awesome.
What was your favorite band to watch? Which set was your favorite?
Gen Y was really good. Those guys are awesome.
Citizens always.
Citizen, those are our homies, but they always throw it out. They always throw down. They were a great band. Fighting for Scraps, Squared Off. A bunch of the local bands really brought it. But for the more well-known bands, I think the Casualties, like you were talking like last week, his energy, Dave's energy is just insane.
Yeah. For me, the Virus, though.
But,
I love that band, so.
Yeah, you mentioned Gen Y, and I know that they had some issues because they were supposed to do a few dates up to the festival, and that fell through. And then I think they had some problems. And from what I understand, like they had Ashley playing drums for them, and that was like a last minute thing for her too, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Because when I was talking to April, I think she knows a lot of the songs. She used to play with them for a bit before, so she already kind of knew all the songs. So just last minute, I mean, there was multiple people that weekend just trying to help out when things fell through, like Tyler and the Street Press got added. You know, drums. 3 times that weekend. You know, it's
You said
kind of cool.
you said April, and I think I said Ashley. So if I was wrong,
Oh,
my apologies.
yeah, yeah. April's awesome. Yeah, she played multiple times, like a lot of other people, even our bass player. He's in the band Citizen also. So right when we were done, he had to go and play another, like a 5-minute break. Like we kill him, I feel bad.
He likes doing it though,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
all right.
He can't complain.
You know what? Drummers, they're just always in demand. They're the hardest to find. They're the hardest to keep. They're the hardest to please.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah,
divas, man. Yeah.
I think in a way they do it to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're always the hardest ones, man. Everybody wants to be a singer or a guitar player.
Right. But yeah, like you were saying about the energy of the Casualties. I mean, when I saw them here in Tulsa, like, it wasn't a very big show. It was a Tuesday night, and but they played like there was 2,000 people there.
Yeah.
And then I watched video of their set at the fest, and they put on a little bit more production value, which was cool with the sirens and all of that.
Yeah.
But I didn't see like a drop in energy compared to when I saw them here in Tulsa. So, and that is the mark of a professional. You get up there and you give it your all. It doesn't matter the size of the audience. You just let them know you're there to fucking rip, and that's what you do.
Yep. There it goes. Yeah, because that stuff goes a long way, especially when you're playing. You know, with the crowd interaction stuff, people actually moving around, being into it, because everybody feeds off of it.
It's nice for us to see that too, because it gives us something to like for us to be more active too, like when we play as well.
Yeah,
it's like
we try to work on that too, because I mean, it's our first show. It was like a little bit more stiff because it'd been the first like show I'd played in like 8 or 9 years, something like that. Problems. We always played bands like years ago, but this is like. Exactly. We all, I got married, divorced, kids, all that stuff.
Got back problems now, stuff like that.
37.
Yeah, when I first started checking you guys out, I didn't realize that you're older. Henry, you're just a couple years younger than I am.
Yeah, I know. You got a baby face.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you guys on the show was because I thought, well, these guys are a little bit younger, so they probably have like a younger perspective. But the other reason was you're a newer band. Even though you've been in bands before, this is still a newer band.
Right.
And I think it's important to use this platform to bring attention to newer bands. Because, since what I call the golden age of street punk, the early 2000s, from my perspective, it seems like it's really difficult for new bands to gain an audience. And like, I don't know if that is just because the scene's not as large as it used to be, or if it's because people are just too fucking distracted with the internet, or because there's just so many bands and so many options to stream music now, or what it is. Or maybe it's a combination of all of those things. But I'm glad that we can use our platform and Instagram, to try and get some eyes and ears on the newer bands like yourselves.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate it. I agree with that. Actually, I think it is a combination of a lot of those things. I mean, it goes like, again, going back to what you guys talked about last week about like printing out paper flyers, going and having to do that, street teams, all that stuff. I remember when I was a teenager, signing up for the Unseen Street Team and flyers, handing them out and and that was when they weren't even as big as they are now. It was when they were still like smaller, It was like the internet people really weren't taking advantage of it as much as we are now. So
I think what you're doing too, man, that's a huge push to like just get newer bands out there, just bringing that more like the street punk be more relevant, Because I feel like, especially back in the day, you'd always see like, you know, the same bands like always touring and stuff. And I know that's you know, a lot of bands can't do that. But if you like what you're doing now, if you don't give people like a little bit of insight to that band, you know, at least you're pushing that anyway, a little bit like direction. I don't know.
For example, even getting booked on the fest like last weekend. That's something huge for us because here in Chicago we don't have fests like that all the time, you know. And street punk, I mean, we got our good punk bands, hardcore, oi, whatever, but like heavy street punk, I mean, it's not like it was back in the early 2000s or even the late 90s, you know, because here it was pretty heavy back in the day, and it's just kind of, you know, when it gets older, it's just kind of scene died out.
Yeah.
But also something like that fest, it's like something good for us because it helps other people, a different audience, you know. And we can still be at home and do it, you know. So
there's a couple of things that you just talked about that I want to touch on. You mentioned the whole thing about, like we were saying last week, about physical flyers and like why that made a difference back in the day. And I've been thinking about that more and more since Punkcore Catalog, that Instagram profile, they posted this. I teased this in the intro. And if you look right at the middle of this, that says
free. I had one of those. I actually had a few of those.
And I'll say the same thing about this that I said about the physical flyers. Having something tangible makes it real for people. Right. And if it's just a digital image on their screen that they are scrolling past, it's dismissive.
You know? Yeah, because I mean, what do we do on the internet all the time? We get ads and stuff. You're just, oh, that looks cool. You're gonna forget about it. But if it's in your face all the time, it's sitting on your counter, on your wall, you know. I've had this since it was released, and you know, we're talking. I think it's 20 years now because this 20 years, 19, yeah. I think it came out in 2002, because I'm pretty sure it was the year that we signed to Punkcore. Yeah, in high school. But that's my point. Is like I still have it, you know. Right. And I've been toying with the idea of releasing a compilation. Same fucking principle, man. Just 10 tracks. It's free, and it's something that if you want to use it as a fucking coaster, fine. But yeah. And at least it has all of the bands represented on the back with their logos and the song titles, and it looks badass on the front, you know. And I feel like the scene is missing that, and that, I mean, you know, there are still older people in the scene like ourselves, but we're kind of few and far between. And I think that Gen Z is like the new face of the scene, but this whole concept is like completely foreign to them because they've grown up on the fucking internet and on social media. Yeah. And I think if we encourage them, hey, like, this is the badass shit that we used to do back in the day in the scene, and there's no reason why we can't do it again. Get on the fucking phone, go to a Kinko's or whatever the fuck it is these days, make a flyer, you know, and maybe we'll make some of these and we'll pass them out at shows, and that'll help the scene kind of, you know, thrive again and breathe some new life into it.
And everybody gets exposure too, you know, all those bands on there. 100%.
Like the flyer thing, when we went to Punk Rock Bowling, we didn't really even go to the festival to a lot of the at the club shows and stuff. Vegas. Anyways, I brought a bunch of the flyers for the fest because I was like, hey, can you hand it out? I'm like, it's a great idea. So I printed up a bunch of flyers, brought them with me. Club shows, hanging out sounds of the street fighters, just like back in the day. Because literally, I mean, that's what we know. You know, I mean, like I was telling you, like we were talking the past few days, I'm like, man, I'm horrible at technology. You know, I suck at it. Yeah. So something like that, something really primitive. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. I know how to do this. Like,
well, you met a lot of people by doing that shit.
Exactly. And you make, you know, like, oh, guys, like, oh shit, I'm in the band. You know,
like passing pins out too. You know, just like giving those out like for free, just left and right. You know.
I mean, like, what do we do? Vegas, and then here, and then where else did I go? To Atlanta. I did the same thing at 40 Fest, you know, handing out buttons, flyers, and shit. Just getting it out there.
Before we go any further, I just want to say to anyone watching, if you have questions, go ahead and submit those by clicking that question mark icon. I've been keeping my eye on it, and there have not been any questions submitted yet. But now is a good time for us to take an audience question. I'm seeing lots of comments come through. Actually, I think I'm seeing more comments in this interview in the short time that we've been on live than almost any other episode. And I think it's just because of the topic. So you guys are obviously interested in the topic, but if you have questions about it, submit those so that we can get to them. And I've got one more question about the fest before we move on to the next topic. Did you get to hang out with very many of the bands afterwards?
I did. I mean, we kind of like, you know, Chief Sex, so that's super cool. Johnny, I talked to him quite a bit. He talked to Brock a lot because actually Chief Sex used our practice space, I guess, because they needed a place to form up. So they already kind of started talking to them. Super nice guys. You know, Dave, right before he even played, I mean, there's barely anybody in the room yet. We were just setting up. Comes up the stage right away. He's like, hey, how are you guys? Like, can't wait to see your set, all that stuff. Asked if we need anything. Super nice guy. You know, hung out with him a little bit after. You know, shit, I can't remember. You know, just running into people. It's funny. I hung out and met more people that weren't playing the fest that were in bands. You know, the guys from the Destructive Fucks were there from Baltimore. You know, Britt from Oil Change. I booked a pre-party. They COVID-related thing. They still came out to the fest. You know, it was a good time. It was like talking, met a lot of people from bands, other big bands that, you know, weren't even playing the fest. They were just there.
For Counteractive was there,
dude.
Coming
from Counteractive, you know. It's crazy. I was just random people. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know. So it was
awesome. I've seen a couple questions come through, so I'm going to check those. But before I do that, you said something that reminded me to tell everyone that I'm going to be announcing next week's guest at the end of this episode. So make sure that you stick around to the end to find out who that's going to be. Having said that, let's look at the questions here. Windy Shitty Kid says, in the age of social media, how are you finding new street punk bands?
social media. Just suggestions, like, you know, things like you might like. You know, I just sometimes late at night I'll just go into a rabbit hole on the internet. I'll just start looking at random stuff on YouTube, find links. You know, that's usually how I do it. Like for example, Oil Change. Probably like 9 months ago. It was earlier in the year. I don't even think they put out the EP they have right now, Voices of the Past. I just followed them. I heard like some stuff they were doing, started following their page. I booked them for the pre-party, you know, things happen, but you know, now they're doing awesome. They just got signed to Dismantle. They already have somebody coming out soon with them. So, for example, you know, just little bands, man, I always just look for whatever. Just rabbit holes. Just get stuck on it.
That's actually pretty hard for me to look for street punk bands online because it's where do I even start, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just stuck listening to the same shit I've been listening to since I was a kid. You know, or my local homies, you know, and that's about it.
And then that's the other thing. Other local people, they might, like, still here in Chicago, people still, you know, get cassette tapes of shit from, like, that's new. And it's like, oh, crap, where'd you get this? They're like nobody. And they're crazy bands, you know, or just, again, like old school tape trading and shit like that. People still do that here and there out here. So.
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot of value in the physical medium. Tapes and CDs, and of course vinyl is used in the punk scene still. But I also think that there is an appropriate place for digital streaming. That's a big reason why I wanted to launch this Spotify playlist and rotate the music each week, because same thing. Like I didn't find a lot of street punk bands on Spotify or whatever, like when I would dig, other than like all the old school shit. And Mike Virus is one of the persons that I had reached out to and said, dude, can you point me in the direction of like some good, you know, newer young bands that you're finding? And he sent me a bunch of links, and most of them were on Bandcamp. And like, that's cool, but who the fuck spends their time on Bandcamp? Like,
Yeah, I know.
I don't know anybody that's like actively on there.
Yeah, I mean, unless for convenience sake, like in the car or something, I'll use like Spotify or YouTube or whatever.
I think
But when I'm at home, man, it's all vinyl, CDs, cassettes. I'm a big vinyl collector, so
Yeah,
you know, I'm something about having the hard copy, right?
right.
Like, there's been times where I like listen to something that's on Spotify and internet, then it's fucking gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, where the hell did it go? I paid for this and I just took it off. Or this is why I've always been big on having an actual hard copy of this stuff. That way I'll, you know, always have it.
Well, the other
So,
thing,
and there's something more with that too, you know, the artwork, the packaging, everything, versus just a picture and hit and play. You know, it feels like it's more, I don't know, it's more, it means more to the person that's buying it, you know?
yeah,
also, I think if you're on Bandcamp and that's where you're finding the bands, especially if like Mike Virus sends you there, maybe we should be on Bandcamp instead of being on Spotify, the more corporate of the two, you know?
There's any of those.
I actually agree with that from a musician standpoint, because on Bandcamp, you can still sell your music.
Right.
The problem is consumers don't want to purchase music.
Mm-hmm.
They, you know, they are on Spotify and Apple Music because that's where the music is the most accessible for the least amount of cost.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned something, Henry, about you know, you see something on there and then the next thing you know it's gone. And
Yeah.
like, that's super frustrating. And like, some of my favorite street punk shit hasn't been on there for years. But I just saw some stuff like the Unseen, their whole catalog is now on there. And for like the longest time, there was like maybe 2 records up there.
Yeah, and it was like the first 2. And that was it.
And so I'm not sure if that's a BYO Records thing and like what the issue was there. Or if the Unseen, for some reason, just because they weren't as active, just didn't give a fuck about it being on there, or what. I don't know. But I was happy to see that shit is on there now. Because a lot of that stuff, I think, is like still important for people getting into the scene. You know, newer people, like, you've got to go back and revisit the classics. You know,
100%. I mean, because you think about it, even with street punk, since it started, I mean, there's all those waves, right? There's all those crazy waves. Every 10, 15 years, there's going to be some kind of a little wave. We've seen it, you know,
yeah.
The 90s, the early 2000s, died out a little bit, came back in the early 2000s. Now it's really getting kind of crazy again. With all the new bands that are starting, you know. So you're always going to have those waves. So there's always going to, like you said, there's always going to be those classics. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's on a steady, gradual climb right now. I kind of always just think of it as like a roller coaster. And like, it takes a while to get to the top. But once you're there, it's awesome. And then the drop is also really exciting. But once the drop is over, it's like, oh shit, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. There for years. Yeah.
I want to move on to another thing real quick. This is kind of an interesting and terrifying factoid about the city of Chicago, but also is a part of Valentine's Day. On February 14th, 1929, 7 people were gunned down in Lincoln Park after being lined up and executed. The suspected perpetrator was none other than Al Capone.
That is correct.
Having said that, what did you guys do for Valentine's Day?
Not a whole lot. Sushi and a movie and sleep because I had work. I didn't mind yesterday. So
Nice.
Late.
Nothing, man. Stayed home.
Crashed his ass playing video games. I don't know.
Stayed home with your right hand?
Yeah.
What it looked like when I walked in
the left
today.
one and the right one, bud. You gotta switch them on.
A lot of tissue back there.
Um, so having talked about the fest a little bit and a little bit about your band, I want to dig in deeper to the band itself. Tell us a little bit about your history. How did Knoxious form?
Oh man, long.
Keep it
Other
brief.
band didn't work out. Based a lot of drama. Other band didn't really work out. That I was starting during. Well, we started it right before COVID, and then COVID hit, and we had our first show lined up, and it was the first year of it. It didn't work out, so me and the rhythm guitar player Sean Murdoch, who now lives in Vegas. Why he's not in the band anymore? He had to move. We started Knoxious with our drummer Ernie. Now Ernie used to be in a really awesome street punk band way back in the day called Alley Slap Service with our other guitar player Fabian. So I hit those guys up. Hey, we're gonna start this band. We got our homegirl Marty to play bass. Basically, we went through a lineup change. Sean and Marty had to leave, like they had, on good terms. You know, this is life stuff. We wanted to move for jobs or whatever. So then hit up John. Me and him were supposed to do something a few years back. Also, remembered him, brought him in to replace Sean, and then we got Elliot from Citizen, since we shared the same practice spot with them basically. So he's always around. He knows our songs, so it was easy. You know, it was a nice transition, and then it's kind of how it started. And then we just the past year and a half, it's been one thing. We're supposed to put our EP out like so many times already, or go to the studio. It keeps getting pushed back. Again, everything, COVID, people leaving, restructuring the whole band. That chemistry, you gotta find it again. So get them nice and tight, and then finally now we're ready. It's only been like a year and a half since we started this band, 2 years almost.
You mentioned the EP, and I want to talk about that a little bit too. But first, I wanted to ask, what does the name Knoxious mean? What inspired the name?
Just because, we are a street punk band, but we're not like the most pleasant. That's the kind of definition, right? Unpleasant. It's also, I thought it'd be kind of funny to put a K in there, kind of like it's back to like Knox Schultz and stuff like that when punks used to put their hair up and shit. So it'd be a little haha. But
right on.
Yeah. It's a little nastier. We're like hardcore street punks, so.
So you mentioned the EP, and I know that you guys are going to be getting into the studio soon to track that, but you were able to do some live tracks recently and get those up on Spotify, which I appreciate because I was able to put it on this playlist and hopefully.
Yeah, we did it for this just so we could get something out.
Yeah.
So.
Tell us a little bit about the EP. What's it called?
The EP is going to be called Arson City EP. What do you think? 8, maybe 9 tracks on it. Hopefully. We want to get there's going to be a vinyl, download cards, stuff like that. So at least if you buy the vinyl, it's just, you're not just going to only have that. We'll put it on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. We're going into the studio Saturday, I think. Saturday, and then we're just gonna be working on that until it's done.
Cool.
I don't know how long it'll take. Right now, we're booked for a day or 2 or something. We should be able to knock them out, but we'll see. So, see how it goes. So
you mentioned Arson City, and I do want to dive a little deeper into that as well. But on the cover art, there's a Chicago cop car on fire. What's the history of that picture? Is there a specific incident that you guys are like, we have to use this?
I thought it was pretty cool image. It was actually during the Chicago riots a few summers ago. So, and that was when the downtown Chicago was just getting lit up, all the cop cars getting lit on fire, tipped over and shit. I thought that image spoke a lot, with the title. Also, just all the nicknames, with Chicago and the Great Chicago Fire, like Chicago riots back in the day, Chicago riots now. People are pretty pissed out here. So,
lyrically, what are most of the songs about?
A lot of them, we got some political songs. We do. Really few. A lot of the songs are about just, everyday stuff, like being frustrated, to people always putting you down, talking shit, basically the typical shit, but not like that teenage angsty crap, like, oh, I'm mad at my parents because they took away whatever. It's more like real life shit. I mean, we're adults now, we're like our 30s, you know what I mean? Yeah, kids, it's just, shitty jobs, not getting your benefits, all kinds of shit. So it's just everyday stuff, and yeah, it's just whatever you feel, whatever. I mean, we got one called Russian Roulette that's on there. It's more of an upbeat song, but it's kind of about like your own addictions, your own demons, but it's like kind of like about taking responsibility for it and not putting it on other people and stuff. Because me and the certain guys in the bands, like we all have like past with certain things and just like history of that shit. And it's just you grow up, you learn things.
Right.
So you kind of keep yourself in check.
You talked about a couple of things that are important that relate to the city of Chicago. We're gonna touch on that some more too, but I want to get another audience question because I'm seeing them increase. Let's see what we've got here.
Don't touch me.
Oh, this is cool. I'll read this, even though it's not a question. Jinxie Cat said, "Not a question. Brought my son to Sounds of the Streets. Stoked he got to meet you, and he says hi."
Oh, I remember them. They were awesome. That little man in the Misfit shirt.
He took pictures with him too, ain't it?
Yeah, he was a cool kid. Shy. Nice guy.
JM Plank 1212 says, "Hey Henry, when you headed to Philly?"
Oh, what's up, man? Whenever you want us out there. Yeah, we're trying to play as much as we can this year, but within the reason with our work schedules and everything. 'Cause we got some things going on this year that can't really say, but they're more than likely is going to be a West Coast tour with 3 international bands that we're going to jump on with in September down to see White Fest. I think if it all works out, it'll end down in California that week. So we'll be there for a weekend.
Okay. Let's go ahead and kind of do a little bit of a deep dive here about the city of Chicago. You mentioned a couple things about some political things that are within the lyrics of your songs that are going to be on this upcoming EP. Are there political or social justice issues that you feel passionate about as a result of living in Chicago?
Just the same shit that's always happened is the corrupt, government, the politicians, everybody, the police, everybody in office. Gentrification, that's a huge thing here.
Immigration rights.
That's another huge one. There's a song that they're him and Fabian are actually writing right now. I think it has to tackle with a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, it's just, like out here we have, like, they'll push people out, and back in the day we had what they called Section 8 housing, the more lower income out into the burbs so they can build these stupid high rises that are all boxy and shit. And, it's also just taking away the character from all the neighborhood architecture, everything. Everything's changing, and it's more people are trying to move out of the city than move here. It's like they're building all this super expensive shit, and nobody can afford to live here. And it's just ruining their whole city, and then everybody's getting pissed. I mean, people that have money now are now homeless or lost their jobs. Now with COVID, it's just, I hear so many stories. I'm a general contractor, so like I work in houses. I talk to people all the time about this stuff. So it's kind of frustrating the way everything's ran.
You mentioned the name of the EP is Arson City. And I just wanted to read a couple of things here that people may not be aware of. And I think that Arson City is an appropriate title because the city has a long history of different fires that have killed a lot of people.
Correct.
Let me read these real quick. The Great Fire of 1871, you mentioned that. People don't really know the exact cause of the fire, but what they do know is that the fire raged for 3 days, wiping out much of the city. On the afternoon of December 30th, 1903, during a sold-out matinee performance, a fire broke out in Chicago's Iroquois Theater. In the short span of 20 minutes, more than 600 people, two-thirds of whom were women and children, were asphyxiated, burned, or trampled to death. In 1958, a fire broke out at Our Lady of Angels School in Chicago. It killed 92 children as well as 3 nuns. So obviously the whole Arson City thing is part of your band's identity.
Yeah.
But you've also mentioned that you're using that title for booking some shows too. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically Arson City comes from our soccer crew, which is Arson City Ultras. And the Chicago soccer team is the Chicago Fire. So through that, like our crew is just a bunch of like skinhead rockers, punkers. We all go to the games together. We're all in the in the crowd with the supporter section. So with that, Arson City, like for us, we're just trying to promote shows for our crew as well as for the scene here in Chicago as well.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from as far as the identity aspect of it goes,
You guys said that Sounds of the Street Fest was a big deal for you because you guys don't have big festival shows like that there.
No.
How would you describe the Chicago punk scene?
It's segregated, just like Chicago, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a good way to put it. I mean, because, to be honest, I mean, like up on the north side, you got a lot of these, a lot of the north side, like pop punk, like whatever type bands. It is kind of segregated, right? Because a lot of the certain bands will play at certain venues or at like certain clubs only. And it's weird, like when we go up north to like a really like ritzy, like gentrified area, and there's like hardcore core bands from like the south side that we know. It's kind of like, oh, you guys are playing here? It's fucking weird.
Yeah, it's like the north side stuff is like the north side punk bands are always like the club bands, the ones that you go to the clubs to see.
The clean cut
like,
ones.
Yeah, out here in the south side, it's like the backyard shows, the basement parties. That's where I like to be.
and it's cool because it sounds straight. A lot of those bands got to fucking play it, and actually show people like what they can do. Because a lot of those bands are fucking sick.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like a lot of the Chicago punk bands here, or even the oi bands or hardcore bands, don't get enough recognition as they deserve. I mean, because they bring it, man. Like some of these bands are just amazing, and some of the local bands, some of our newer influencers. We go off stuff they do. They make us want to play better.
They're all south side bands too.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's interesting, I think, about Chicago is it's a large city and it's, separated by territories basically. But then there's also on the outskirts, you have the suburbs, which is completely different.
Oh, yeah.
What's your opinion on like suburban punks versus city punks? Like, is there a clash when they're in the same room together, or what is the vibe like between the?
I mean, we come from the burbs too, before we moved out here.
I grew up kind of like it's still considered the burbs. I grew up in Rogers Park, which is like far up north, which is basically the burbs, but like the borderline was city in a way, the north side. But all my friends growing up either been to South Side or like Old Town or like, because all the areas change over the years. Like, and then like when my parents got divorced, I had to move to the suburbs and stuff. So I went to junior high school as a punk in the suburbs, growing up in the city. So it is kind of weird. So I am kind of like both, I grew up in both things, both areas. I think whenever, like, for example, I was in high school, we come out to the city, I'd take friends out to the city to go to like a real punk show or go to the Fireside or somewhere like that. they see some crazy shit go down, like a fight in the middle of the street, people get thrown on top of cars, like moving.
And they get scared about that.
Yeah, and they get scared. I mean,
Never seen that shit before, you know.
it's what happens, you know. It's just
everybody's all right.
everybody has to experience stuff, but you know, everybody has different backgrounds too. So some people might have not been able to experience something like that. But
you can't knock somebody for having a different life experience than you know.
Exactly. It's just like we wouldn't knock somebody. Like most times, I wouldn't knock somebody from being for the burbs. You know, like
that'd be stupid of us to do.
I know it's really fucking ignorant. It's just I don't know. I mean, people can't control where they grow up or where they're from, right? Like that's whatever. But as long as you have the same love and you're there for the same reason, it really shouldn't matter.
Well, I think it's the music that is what unites everybody, right? Or at least it should do that.
For example, sorry, man.
Sorry, say that again. I missed it.
No, I was going to say, like, for example, do you mind if I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sorry, water, man. For example, I had a rich friend who came from a very wealthy family, a street punk dude, crusty, didn't shower the whole nine, high school, right? He despised his family. They tried to give him all the money, all this stuff, but he just hated who they were. He didn't like them. He didn't respect them. They probably weren't good people at heart. So, like, he decided to go live on the street instead of living in their big-ass mansion or whatever big-ass house in the suburbs. He was like, so, I mean, everyone's background is different. You know, you could come from a wealthy family but still hate the shit out of your parents or your lifestyle or whatever. You know, it's just, everybody's different, man. Everyone's got their own shit. So.
And I think that the message of the scene should be about unity and not, like, divisive high school class bullshit.
100%. 100%.
And, like, you know, some of the coolest bands I've ever met are from Chicago. And, like, Chicago has kind of it has like a really strong oi presence compared to other parts of the country. And, you know, that music is very anthemic and uplifting and all about working class and all of that. And I'm just curious, like, has that being in that environment, has that made an impact on your sound also because there is such a heavy oi influence in Chicago?
Yeah, I've kind of always really been heavily influenced by a lot of oi. You know, chants, sing along, you know, just gang vocals, all that stuff. Like, really brings the power. Like, there's fucking Total Awareness, Garcia.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are awesome. Garcia
Total. Yeah, they're awesome.
He has the accent, I don't.
The finesse, if you will.
Yeah, he does. Go ahead.
No, as far as the music goes, I mean, I love all that. Like, you know, we're friends too with like some of those bands as well. But I don't. As far as like in like our sound, I think we're just straight to the street punk roots. You know.
Yeah. I mean, we also like John listens to a lot of metal. I listen to a lot of metal. Like I like Midnight. I like Speedwolf. I like Shitfucker. I like stuff like that too. You know. And that's the other thing. As we get older, some of our songs are a little bit crunchier, a little bit more harder or heavier than we're used to playing back in the day because our musical like taste changed too. Just like everything else, it evolves. So we just try to incorporate everything that we like.
I'm going to go to another audience question here because I'm seeing those pop up again as well. Chaotic Revelation says, cheers to my brothers Knoxious.
What up, Nate?
Nate's awesome. Nate. Yeah.
That's that dude says, what's one of the sickest original flyers that you own?
Damn.
I got one. It was actually a show Josh booked way back in the day at that place, Rubes. But the flyer says pubes because whoever, like, somebody fucked up because part of the R was ripped off the awning outside the venue. It says at pubes. It has the address in Harvey, and it's the Craze, the Street Brats back in the heyday, and then this old street punk band I was friends with called Toxic Youth. Those guys were awesome. It's probably one of the coolest looking flyers I have because it's all hand drawn. It's just like the directions are so shitty. It's like go as many miles to 173rd, take a left and look for punks. Like it's just so fucking not good.
Right. I'm going to do some more audience questions too, real quick. Because one of them I saw is actually one that I had for you guys, but I'm going to let them ask it. Gothic Boot Boy says, what good punk and oi bands does Chicago have? I know we already talked a little bit about some punk bands, but we didn't shout out, I don't think, any Chicago oi bands, except for maybe...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fear City.
Fear City, man. You can't talk about Chicago without talking about those guys, man. Fear City.
Who are the guys from Detroit? They're not from Chicago, but they're part of the crew.
They play out here a lot. They're part of FCS.
Man.
You're talking about Badass. That's in Keep Away.
Yeah.
We actually have a show with Keep Away on this 26.
Yeah,
Fighting for Scraps. I know I talked about them a couple times. Squared Off again. Hoser, Tony. Those guys are awesome. Shitison. Again, talk about Shitison. Dead Living. They're a really awesome band. I don't know what else to say. They're just really fucking good. Shit, what is it? Truth or Sonata. We owe, and actually Adam, man.
Adam fucking has helped us out a lot.
We owe a lot to
him, man.
Specifically to the guys that Shit Sing Cruiser and Dead Living, man. They've helped us out a lot this past year.
Yeah.
So they've supported us since day one.
And they're great bands.
Yeah.
And we're not just saying that because they're a front.
But they really are. Good, I mean, those are the type of bands that are on it that we get inspired by.
Right. Yeah.
They try to make us want to be better.
Definitely.
So it's shit like that. And everybody here pretty much supports everybody within their certain realm, their certain groups.
And that's awesome too. Talking about the punk rock with the unity. It's like when you have bands and friends that are all in bands and they're all pushing each other.
Yeah,
it's like an awesome feeling.
Yes,
we all go to shows together, and they're like, "Fuck yeah, we're all getting into it together," Yeah. So it's good,
It's a good sense of support from your scene, Because I remember back in the day playing in bands and shit. It wasn't like that all the time. People talking shit, fucking people. Every one time, fucking up our gear on purpose, stuff like that. Yeah, stupid shit.
Okay, I got a few more quick questions for you guys before we got to wrap it up. And these questions are going to go to both of you, so you can each answer. Chicago is known for hot dogs and deep dish pizza. Of the two, which are your favorite?
Hot dog with mustard.
Yeah, dude. Onions, that relish.
Yeah. And there's an awesome pizza joint out here called Pequod's. That's probably the best fucking pizza in Chicago.
That's just right across the street from me last night.
This is good.
Me?
Yep.
I say neither because my thing about pizza. Real Chicago pizza is not deep dishes. To me, it's more of a novelty or a touristy thing. It is fucking awesome, but it's basically like a lasagna, and kind of the way it's built. Real Chicago pizza is square cut, pub style, thin crust. Your little square cuts, fucking amazing. You do double dough, but you just got to get it pub style. That's the best way.
Also, tacos in Chicago are fucking awesome too.
Maybe have so many taco trucks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, what's a bucket list band that you want to see?
Oh, dude, I already know. I might go to Rebellion and August, just for the restarts, dude. Just for the restarts, yeah.
Mine would be. That's so hard because I'm not gonna lie. I've seen a lot of my over the years when people make comebacks. I'm like, oh shit, that's on my bucket list. Cross it off.
It doesn't have to be a punk band.
No, exactly. Me, I would have said Motorhead, but I've seen them 8 times since I was 9 years old.
Nice.
So that's the first band, my favorite band of all time. If I could ever, because motherfucker's dead, Thin Lizzy. Die to see Thin Lizzy if he was alive, if they were alive.
And bucket list to play with.
To play with?
Yeah.
Infrared or Anti-Nowhere League for me.
Man.
Would be badass.
Either one of those, man. That would be I love everything about those two bands, man. Or that or the Hat Trickers. Those guys are sick. I fucking love those guys. Oh wait, you know what? That's a bucket list band right there. The Hat Trickers. I've been looking for their fucking album for years.
Awesome. John, what about you?
I think this last week was good enough for me. I could die happy now. But hey, man, let's do a show together. That'd be cool. I'd rather play with you guys now,
Yeah, man. I there's a couple of things that we're talking about as far as shows are concerned and potential tour things, but it's still kind of all like, well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Are you guys talking near future for yourselves or what?
There's some near future stuff that we're discussing right now. That would be this.
We just changed the interview, by the way. Now we're interviewing you. No, but for real, like, so the next year, or
there's some stuff that we're talking about for this year.
Okay.
There has been some tour talk about this year, but nothing set in stone. I really think that 2023 is kind of going to be a busier year for us as far as playing shows and touring is concerned. Just because this year is like we're still finishing up our record. We're getting really close. But also just like we don't want to rush it. And there's all that shit going on with vinyl production right now is all fucked up. And like,
Yeah, it's a mess.
it's like 8 months out or some crazy shit like that, isn't
For
it?
most
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I don't want us to release our new record, you know, just because we're anxious to put it out. Like the timing needs to be right.
Right.
I think that
Makes sense.
I think this year is kind of going to be sorting through all of that. Like, when is the best time to put this thing out? And like, you know, kind of decide on some shows that make sense around that. And then also this, like, Punk Rock Talk and just our whole social media thing, like, it's just a whole other animal compared to what we were used to back in the day. Like, we didn't have platforms like this in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I'm kind of looking at it through this new lens of like, well, everybody's on their fucking phone all the time. Well, we don't necessarily need to be playing shows in order to get in front of people. So,
Hey, mad respect for you for doing
Serious.
this though, because
Yeah.
I mean that's like innovative as fuck, you know.
Yeah,
It's like you're doing
nobody
it
else
right,
doing
you
that
know?
right now. That's why when he asks us, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
well, you know, like, I know we're going a little over time here, but I'm glad that you guys are bringing it up because I think it's also kind of important to talk about. Like, I'm always very business minded when it comes to things for the band. And
Yeah.
when we started talking about doing a new record, I was thinking like, okay, yeah, but how do we do business in today's landscape? And, you know, I look at other bands in different genres and what they're doing and how they're using the internet to get the word out. And a lot of different genres, you know, they have successful podcasts. They have successful playlists. They have successful means of distribution that our scene doesn't really have.
Right.
And like, I started digging for that, trying to find it, and just wasn't having any luck. And then I just asked myself one day, why the fuck don't we just do it?
Yeah, you do it yourself.
Yeah, you know, that's what it's all about. And so, like, if that means that I've got to become like the Joe Rogan of street punk or whatever the fuck.
Well, don't become him,
Yeah.
but you know, you're doing good, dude.
So yeah, and plus, like I was saying before, I just think it's a really good way for us to bring attention to the other bands, you know, that are newer and that, you know, maybe the scene as a whole isn't really aware of. You know, like, people in your area are familiar with who you are, but people on, you know, each side of the country, they might not know. So this is a good way to pull together.
And that's kind of like that's kind of why, like, when we went to Punk Rock Bowling and 40 Fest, I'm like, well, they don't fucking know who we are here. Like, some buttons, have a flyer, you know, take that, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, everything we've been doing this year is like, it's working. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do one last audience question before I let you guys go and we wrap this shit up. Okay, this is a good one. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this person's name, but Shinobimk29. What was your favorite song to perform, and what's your favorite song to play?
I like playing Stuck in a Rut. That's a cool one. But But I think my favorite is that ska song we got, "Cross the Line."
Yeah.
That one's fun just because it's not in your face the whole time, and it's something you could move around a little bit too.
So we actually have fun with, but it's still got its hard parts too. It's got nice transitions. Those are yours?
Those are mine, yeah.
I think mine would be Russian roulette, and I would have to no, take that back. I would have to say that we have a song called "What's Life,"
Yeah.
and then "Stuck in a Rut." Also, I like that one. That was great.
Okay, so before I let you guys go, any shout outs that you guys want to do?
Yeah.
Adam from Kreutzer did our photo shoot. The guys from Conciencia Total recorded us. That was really cool of them to do.
And then Dead Living, Citizen, DOS from Cincinnati, real quick. DOS, I booked them for the Sounds of the Street pre-party with the Virgin Whores, Total Concierge, and then I forgot what was it. Stick Ups, the Stick Ups. My buddy, the Stick Ups.
Yeah.
DOS, man, they're awesome. They just opened up like just right after the fest. They played, stayed all weekend. They went to Cincinnati, opened up for the Casualties on Sunday. Check those guys out. The Destructive Pucks, awesome guys from Baltimore, really good band. Hopefully we try to do something with them and some other bands that we talked about on here today, like in the near future, as we've got a few things going on. I don't know, should have said all the local Chicago bands, like nothing but love and respect for those guys.
Cool. Well, thanks again for being my guests today. Awesome to have you guys on here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
No problem. When should people look for your new EP to drop? Is there a release date?
We're going into the studio to track everything on this Saturday. So, I mean, if everything works out and, vinyl, because we're going to get it pressed. If we can have a CD version of it first, we'll put out first whatever we can. CD, I mean, digital easiest.
Yeah, about like a month and a half digital.
Yeah, it might be it might be into the summer before we get, actual wax out,
Okay.
So, yeah, and hopefully that's why we're trying to plan on having it out by then. So if possible tour works out, we'll be ready to tour for that and stuff like that in September.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, pay attention to Knoxious Instagram page, their social media. Again, they are on our Spotify playlist, Rebellion Noise 2022. You can follow them on Spotify, so whenever they do put out new music, you can get it there. To play us out, this song is by Knoxious. Thanks again, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Welcome. Okay, next week, we're going to shift gears here a little bit from street punk to street rock when we interview the Filthy City foursome, Baltimore, Maryland's The Ravagers. They've got a new record out right now. It's on Spotify. That'll be on our playlist on Monday. Until then, thanks for watching Punk Rock Talk. We'll see you next week. Lyric says Happy Valentine's Day week. And bye-bye.